The ambush in the grasslands, the wind, moved slowly across the golden grasslands, carrying dust and the soft sound of buzzing insects. The tall grass reached the waist of a man walking alone, a rifle in his hand and a pack on his back. His name was Mark Dalton, a human explorer assigned to check the untouched lands of planet Tivor for possible colony expansion. He had heard rumors, whispers really, of small beings in the wild never seen, never captured, just legends from failed survey. Teams who returned shaken and silent. Mark didn't believe in fairy tales, but something about this place felt strange. The air was too still, the silence too perfect, and his instincts kept shouting that he was being watched. He paused, turned slowly, and scanned the sea of grass, but saw nothing, just endless yellow and soft hills under a pale blue sky. He moved forward again, each step crunching softly. His boots disturbed the peace. And with each minute, the uneasy feeling in his gut grew stronger. Then it happened. A sudden rustling on his left, fast and sharp, and before he could turn, something hit his leg. Hard and fast, like a stone from a slingshot. Mark fell to one knee. Groaning, he saw a tiny dart stuck in his thigh, no bigger than a sewing needle. Then came the second one. Then the third. He rolled behind a rock and pulled out his rifle. His heart pounded like thunder as he scanned the grass again. Shapes moved small. Fast and intelligent, they were no more than 2 feet tall, dressed in leaf armor and holding little crossbows. Their eyes glowed with a faint green light, and their faces were serious, not wild, not savage. Mark could tell they were planning their next move. "I'm not here to hurt you," Mark shouted, keeping his weapon down but ready. "I'm just exploring." The tiny warriors didn't answer, but they paused. That gave Mark a chance. He pulled out a flare from his belt and shot it into the sky. A burst of red light lit up the air, making the grasslands shimmer in the glow. The little warriors jumped back, clearly alarmed. In the brief light, he saw them clear, dozens of them, standing in a circle, spears and nets raised. But in the center stood one figure different from the rest, a female, smaller than the others, wearing a crown made of silver threads and blue feathers. Her eyes were sharp, and her voice, when she spoke, was soft but strong. "You are not like the others," she said, in perfect English, though slow. "And careful. You are calm, and you speak before you shoot." Mark lowered his weapon, blood still dripping from his leg. "And you're not just stories," he said, breathing hard. "Who are you?" "We are the Taraki," she said, "guardians of the grasslands. We have hidden from humans for many years, but now you walk too close to our home." Mark nodded, trying to stay still as the pain pulsed through his leg. "I didn't know." "I'm just a scout." "You are brave," she said. "And you warned your kind instead of calling them to attack?" Mark blinked, then realized she thought the flare was a warning, not a signal for help. He stayed silent and let her believe it. Maybe it would keep them from shooting again. Suddenly, one of the tiny warriors shouted and pointed at the hills. Smoke was rising in the distance, thick and black. The female turned quickly, her voice sharp now. "Hunters again. They burn the edge of the forest." She looked at Mark, then gave a strange signal, and all the Taraki vanished into the grass like shadows. Mark watched in silence, then pushed himself to his feet, ignoring the pain, and limped after the smoke. By the time he reached the fire, the hunters were already there, humans with flamers and traps. "No signs of wildlife," one of them said, laughing. "Only bugs and grass. Nothing worth noting." Mark stepped in, still bleeding. "Stop the burn. There are intelligent beings out there. I've seen them." The leader laughed. "What? Elves? You hit your head." "I'm serious," Mark said. "They're real, and they're watching us." The leader waved him off. But Mark pulled out his body cam and showed the footage, tiny shapes moving, glowing eyes, a voice speaking English. The laughter stopped. That night, Mark sent a full report to command, warning them about the Taraki and asking for a protected zone around the grasslands. Most of the team mocked him, but a few listened. And among those few was someone high enough to act. 3 days later, while Mark sat alone at his camp near the grassland, someone approached silently. It was the same Taraki queen, this time with a group of elders. They stood before him without fear, their eyes thoughtful. "You protected us from fire," she said. "You told your tribe not to burn. You have shown courage and honor." Mark nodded, unsure what to say. Then came the part he didn't expect. "As thanks," the queen said, raising her hand. "Our tradition says we must bind with a protector. You have been chosen." From behind her stepped a young Taraki female, graceful, beautiful in a delicate way, and no taller than Mark's knee. She wore silver bands and looked up at him with large, curious eyes. Mark's mouth opened slightly, confused and shocked. "Wait, what?" The queen smiled. "You are now." Her mate Mark could only stare, unsure if this was real or if he had lost too much blood in the grass. The tiny bride. Mark sat frozen, trying to understand what had just happened. The tiny Taraki elders looked at him calmly, while the young female, his supposed mate, stood silently by the queen's side. Her silver bands shimmered under the moonlight, and her expression was not shy, but proud, as if this was normal for her. "I don't understand," Mark finally said, speaking slowly. "This is a mistake, right? You're not serious." The Taraki queen nodded once. "You defended our people without asking for reward. You stopped the flames. You stood wounded, but did not strike. In our laws, a protector is honored with a life bond." Mark stood up slowly, holding his side. "But I'm human, and she's well teeny." The queen tilted her head. "We know what you are, and we do not force bonds. If you refuse, you may go. We will not harm you." Mark looked down at the young female, who stepped forward. She placed a small hand on his boot and said in soft English, "My name is Yuri. Daughter of the chief, I choose you." His heart skipped a beat, not because of romance, but because of the calm power in her voice. She wasn't a child. She was young. Yes, but clearly an adult in her species. She had made her choice with honor. And that made it harder for him to walk away. "I need time to think," he said gently. "This is all." "New," the Taraki nodded, and the group disappeared into the tall grass like smoke. Yuri remained behind, sitting on a small rock, looking up at the stars. Her tiny spear rested across her lap, and she said nothing more that night. Mark made a fire, dressed his wounds, and stared at her from across the flames. This was not what he signed up for. He came to explore, not get married to a foot-tall alien warrior, and yet, something about this situation felt important. The next morning, Mark tried to radio the base, but static filled the air. The signal was jammed, maybe by the Taraki, or maybe by the environment. Either way, he was on his own. Yuri followed him wherever he went, not speaking unless asked. She moved with skill, avoiding noise, always watching the sky. "Are you guarding me?" Mark asked once, and she replied, "I'm learning you." He wanted to laugh, but couldn't. Her answer felt serious. And he didn't want to disrespect her culture. Over the next few days, Mark showed her how he collected samples, how scanners worked, how he logged information. She listened with care, asked smart questions, and even fixed his drone's camera with a tool smaller than her hand. One evening, while sitting near a shallow stream, Yuri spoke. "You think I'm strange?" Mark looked up from his tablet. "Not strange, just surprising." "We think you are strange too," she said, her voice calm, "but you are brave. And you did not treat me like a child." "You're clearly not," Mark said, setting his tablet down. "You've saved me twice now." Yuri smiled slightly. "That is what mates do." He looked at her carefully. "Yuri, back home, things are different. Marriage is a big deal for us. It's not something we decide in one day." "I know," she replied. "That is why I stay with you. I will learn your ways too." Mark sighed, unsure what the future would look like. But one thing was clear: he couldn't treat this like a joke. Yuri was real. Her people were real, and they had trusted him when others might not have. Later that night, a soft rustling came from the east ridge. Mark's hand went to his rifle. Yuri was already crouched with her spear raised. Then came the roar, low and ugly. A beast twice the size of a horse stepped from the grass, six-legged and covered in dark plates. Its eyes glowed red, and its mouth dripped with black saliva. Yuri shouted something in her own language, and from the shadows Taraki warriors appeared. They launched darts, nets, and glowing ropes. But the beast was fast. It knocked two of them into the air, heading straight for Mark. He fired his rifle. 3 shots to the face, but the creature didn't stop. Suddenly, Yuri leaped high, landing on the beast's back. She drove her spear into a soft joint behind its ear. It screamed, thrashed, then crashed to the ground. Mark ran to her, heart racing. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, breathing hard. "I am your shield. You are my bond." The other Taraki gathered around, dragging the beast's body away. The queen arrived again, this time without a crown. Just a warrior's blade on her back. "You fought beside her," she said. "You both chose each other in battle. That is stronger than tradition." Mark looked at Yuri, who stood proudly beside him. A smear of dark blood across her arm. She met his eyes and said, "Now do you accept me?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he bent down and touched her forehead gently with his, the way he had seen Taraki do before. She smiled, and the tribe let out a cheer that echoed into the stars. The bond and the burden. Mark woke before sunrise, the grass still wet with dew and the sky just turning from black to soft gray. Yuri stood on a stone nearby, her arms crossed, watching the horizon as if waiting for something. Her hair moved gently in the breeze, tied back with a golden thread. She looked calm, but Mark could tell something was on her mind. Couldn't sleep either. Mark asked, sitting up and rubbing his eyes. She turned her head slightly. "Danger moves with the sun today. I feel it." Mark had learned to listen when she spoke like that. Yuri's instincts were sharper than any scanner. He stood and packed his things, checking the energy level of his drone and his rifle. The tribe had given him new supplies: light armor stitched from giant beetle hide, and tiny tools crafted by Taraki hands. Everything felt different now, like he wasn't just visiting, but part of something larger. As they moved through the grasslands, the sound of wings passed overhead. Mark looked up and spotted Scoutbird's mechanical drones, not native to Tiver. "That's Earth tech," he said, frowning. "Recon drones could be a new survey team." Yuri narrowed her eyes. "They do not ask to enter." Mark stopped walking, his heart heavy. "If they're here, it means command didn't listen. They sent a follow-up team, probably armed." The two continued toward the eastern cliffs, where Yuri said the Taraki had hidden their sacred springs. As they walked, more signs of trouble appeared: burnt grass, broken stalks, strange tracks left by boots not Taraki's feet, but human ones, heavy and careless. At the edge of the cliff, they found it, a sensor beacon marked with the Earth's Federation logo, blinking softly and buried in the ground. Mark knelt beside it, lips tight. "They're mapping this area for takeover. They're going to build here." Yuri looked at the device with calm hatred. "They draw lines across our sky and call it theirs." He placed his hand on hers. "I'll stop it, I promise." But promises weren't enough anymore. That evening, Taraki runners brought urgent news. The humans had set up a forward camp, complete with walls, weapons, and armored walkers. The queen gathered her people in the hollow of the moonstones. Under the glow of blue torches, Mark stood at her side, Yuri by his arm. "We cannot face their fire," said one elder. "They crush mountains with their machines." Mark raised his voice. "Not all humans are the same. Let me talk to them." The queen gave a slow nod, but her eyes showed doubt. "One voice cannot block thunder." "I'll make it echo," he replied, "at dawn." Mark walked alone into the human camp, his hands raised, the Tiraki watching from the distance. The soldiers aimed rifles at him, but didn't shoot. A tall woman in a commander's coat stepped forward. Her face sharp, her voice cold. "State your name and reason," she ordered. "Mark Dalton, Survey Unit," he said clearly. "I'm here as a diplomat, not a threat. You went dark for weeks. Now you show up in native armor, looking like a tribesman." Mark nodded. "That's because I became one," the commander scoffed. "You've gone native." "Lost your mind?" "No," Mark said. Stepping closer, "I found people, real people. They live here, they think, speak, feel. They're not bugs or primitives. They have culture. They made me part of their world." The woman folded her arms. "That world ends in 72 hours. We break ground for a dome city, orders from above." Mark's heart sank, but he kept calm. "If you do that, you start a war you can't win. Not because of power, but because of shame. When the public finds out Earth crushed a peaceful tribe our own kind will tear your legacy apart." Her face didn't change, but her eyes shifted slightly, doubt flickering in them. "And what's your solution?" "Give me 1 week," he said. "One chance to bring you face to face with their leaders. Hear them, look them in the eye. If you still want to dig, I won't stop you." She stared at him for a long moment, then said, 72 hours. Not a second more. Back at the Tiraki camp, Mark told the queen everything. She listened in silence, then looked at her people. "If they do not listen, we vanish from the world." Yuri stood beside Mark and took his hand. "Then we make them listen together." That night, Mark wrote a broadcast. A signal beam sent to every open channel across Earth Federation satellites. He told the truth about the Tiraki, their knowledge, their courage, their peaceful way of life, and about Yuri, who had chosen him not as a trophy, but as a partner. In trust, the message ended with his voice, strong and clear. "If we destroy them, we destroy ourselves." As the stars blinked above and the grass whispered below, the signal moved through the sky, heading toward 1,000 years back home. What came next would decide everything. When the Earth spoke back, the next morning, the sky above Tiver looked the same, calm and pale, but something in the air had changed. Birds flew differently. The wind carried a strange pressure. Mark stood near the stream where he first saw Yuri, now unsure if the message he sent had even reached Earth. Yuri knelt beside him, dipping her fingers in the water. Her reflection wobbled gently on the surface. "You are quiet today," she said. "I'm listening." Mark replied, "Sometimes after you shout into the void, all you can do is wait." Yuri nodded and stood. "Then let us wait while preparing to fight." Before they could return to the tribe, a humming sound filled the air, low and metallic. Growing louder with each second, Mark looked up and saw it a silver craft breaking through the clouds. Not a warship, but a diplomat-class vessel, small and smooth, carrying the Earth's Federation emblem on its side. Mark's heart pounded. He grabbed Yuri's hand. They answered, within the hour. The Queen, Yuri, and Mark stood in a wide circle of stones as the ship landed. Steam hissed from the sides, and the door opened, revealing to humans a woman in a blue suit with dark lenses over her eyes, and a tall man behind her carrying a silver case. "I'm Lya Monroe," the woman said. "Earth Federation Ethics Council. Your signal reached the right ears." Mark gave a relieved nod. "Thank you for coming." The Queen stepped forward slowly, her guards tense. "You bring words or weapons?" She asked. "Only truth," Lya said. bowing her head respectfully. "We came to see the people you spoke for." What followed was a slow walk through the Taraki homeland. The visitors saw how the tribe lived in huts or holes, but interwoven. Towers of vines, powered by sunlight and cooled by natural wind tunnels. They saw water filters made from crystal roots and crop gardens shaped to move with the sun. "They're not primitive," Laya whispered. "They're efficient." At nightfall, they sat around a fire. Eating fruit from Taraki trees, Yuri sat beside Mark, translating when needed. The queen spoke of seasons and storms, of memories passed down through song, and of how their people once shared this land with creatures now gone, killed off by machines that dug too deep. Leah listened closely, asking questions, always taking notes. "You've built all this with no pollution, no waste," she said. "You've done what Earth still struggles to do," the queen replied, with a soft smile, "because we do not take more than we need." The next day, Leah and her assistant returned to the base camp, leaving behind a small translator drone to speak with the Taraki directly. Mark followed them, walking past cold stares and whispered insults from soldiers who thought he had betrayed them. The commander was waiting, arms crossed. "Well?" Leah removed her glasses. "Call off the dig immediately." "What?" the commander said. "That's not your decision. It is when your mission violates 6 interplanetary ethics codes." Laya replied, "These people are intelligent, peaceful, and possess advanced eco-engineering. If Earth destroys them, the backlash will be historic." The commander's face turned red. "They're tiny, and yet wiser than you," Laya snapped. "I'm invoking Article 7. This site is now under protected status. Any violation will result in full review and criminal action." Mark stood beside her, silent but proud. For the first time in weeks, he felt like someone was listening, back in the Taraki homeland. News of the protection spread fast. The queen gathered her people in the moon circle and held up a long strand of bluegrass, symbol of peace and rebirth. "The sky has spoken," she said, "and the stars did not bring fire, but honor." That night, there was music. Drums made of bark and windpipes carved from stone. Mark joined the celebration, watching the Taraki dance in wide circles under starlight. Yuri took his hand and pulled him into the rhythm, her laugh soft and glowing like firelight. Later, away from the drums, Yuri and Mark sat on a cliffside. The land stretched wide before them. "You changed the future," she said. "No," Mark replied. "We did." She leaned against his arm. "Now you are truly one of us." He looked at the stars above, then at her. "Yuri, do you ever wish you could see my world?" She nodded slowly. "Only if I walk beside you, not behind." Mark smiled. "That's the only way I want it." Below them, the grass moved gently in the wind, no longer hiding warriors, but sheltering a people finally seen. The war that almost came had ended with words, not weapons, and from that peace, something even more powerful had begun to grow. The gift of the hills. Weeks passed quietly on Tiver. The skies stayed calm. The grasslands returned to peace. And the Earth Federation officially declared the Taraki territory a protected heritage zone. For the first time, humans and Taraki lived near one another without fear. Though not without curiosity, Mark now worked as the official human ambassador to the Taraki people, a title he never asked for but carried with pride. He spent his days translating requests, fixing broken gear, and helping both sides understand each other. Yuri was always by his side, not as a helper or shadow, but as an equal. She had begun teaching Taraki language to human researchers and, in turn, learned more about Earth technology. She asked questions no one expected, like how radios found frequencies or why steel melted at certain heat levels. Her mind was sharp. And Mark knew she was more than just a warrior. She was becoming a bridge between worlds. One morning, a Taraki scout arrived with urgent news. A section of the western hills had collapsed after heavy rain, revealing a hidden chamber beneath. The rock, the Queen ordered it sealed until Mark and Yuri could inspect it first. They left at once, joined by a small group of Taraki elders. The entrance was narrow, just enough for Mark to squeeze through. The air inside was dry and still, untouched by wind or life. What they found stunned everyone. The walls were covered in carvings, not Taraki, not human, but something older. Ancient symbols glowing faintly with green light. In the center of the chamber stood a stone table. On top of it rested a black orb, floating just inches above the surface, pulsing softly. Like a heart, Mark stepped closer, feeling warmth from it. "What is this place?" he whispered. One of the elders replied in a shaky voice. "A myth, long forgotten. We call it the Seed of the Sky. It was said to be left by the first visitors, the ones who taught us to speak to plants, shape wind, and walk without sound." Yuri stepped forward slowly, her eyes fixed on the orb. "It is real," she said, "and it is awake." Mark raised his scanner, but it shorted out instantly, sparks dancing across the screen. "No tech," he muttered. "It doesn't allow artificial reading. What do we do with it?" he asked. The Queen arrived then, her face calm but serious. "We guard it. It is part of our past, and maybe our future." But not everyone agreed. That night, whispers spread among the humans stationed nearby. Some argued the orb could be a power source. Others feared it was a weapon. By morning, someone had tried to steal it. Mark found the chamber entrance cracked, the stones disturbed, and the orb missing. Panic swept through the Taraki camp. Yuri called for trackers, and they found the trail a single human had taken it, fleeing toward the outer zone. Without waiting, Mark and Yuri followed, cutting across the grasslands under a darkening sky. "If he activates it wrong, we don't know what could happen," Mark said, running fast. That thing didn't come from Earth or Tiver. They caught up with the thief near a rocky hill, where he had stopped, trying to understand the orb. "Dante, touch it," Mark shouted, but it was too late. The orb pulsed, and the air cracked with light. A wave of energy exploded outward, knocking everyone to the ground. Mark hit the dirt hard, ears ringing, vision blurred. When he looked up, the thief was unconscious, the orb floating above him and spinning faster than before. Yuri stood, shaking dust from her skin. "It's not a weapon," she said. "It's a memory." The orb stopped spinning, then slowly lowered itself into the earth. The ground closed over it like it had never been disturbed. Silence returned. The Queen arrived moments later. And after learning what happened, she looked at Mark with calm strength. "Now we know it still listens," she said, "and it still chooses." Later that night, around the fire, the Queen placed her hand on Mark's shoulder. "You have protected more than our people," she said. "You have protected the story of the stars." Yuri rested beside him, her head against his arm. "We did it together," she whispered. "But the balance is thin now." "What do you mean?" Mark asked. She looked up at him with thoughtful eyes. "The more Earth watches, the more they will want. And some gifts are not meant to be touched." Mark stared at the sky, now glowing with unfamiliar stars. He knew she was right. The world had changed again, and the hardest part wasn't over, it was just beginning. When curiosity becomes a threat, *Tivers.com was no longer untouched. What started as a peaceful agreement between Earth and the Taraki had now drawn wider attention. The activation of the ancient orb had been detected across multiple deep space monitoring stations, and now the stars above Tivor were no longer silent. A second Earth ship arrived, larger than the diplomatic vessel, not painted in white or blue, but in steel gray. Its engine screamed as it landed, and soldiers stepped out in heavy armor, led by a man with cold eyes and medals that glittered like threats. General Rowan had arrived. Mark stood with Yuri at the border of the Taraki sanctuary as the dust from the ship settled. Rowan stepped forward and offered no greeting, just a sharp demand. "Where is the artifact?" "It returned to the Earth," Mark replied calmly. "It didn't want to be taken." Rowan narrowed his eyes, "Then dig it out." Yuri stepped forward. "It is not a machine. It is alive in its own way." He looked down at her, eyes sharp and unkind. "You're speaking above your size." "Little one," Mark stepped between them, his voice colder than Tiver's night winds. "Then speak to me. General, I'm the one who outranks you on this land." The tension cracked in the air. Rowan smiled thinly. "That's where you're wrong, son. This land is rich in unseen minerals. The Council's ethics mean little now that science and profit are involved." Back at the Taraki village, panic spread quietly. The tribe had lived in hiding for generations, but now the open world had found them. The queen gathered her people in the sacred circle, torches lit, winds heavy with ash from distant burns. "The sky brought monsters once," she said. "Now it brings them in human skins." Mark stood beside her. Powerless for the first time in weeks, the Ethics Council had been overruled, replaced by a corporate division seeking ancient energy and rare elements beneath Taraki land. The treaty was suspended. The mining had already begun near the far hills that night. Mark and Yuri climbed to the top of the cliff where they had first watched the stars together. The hum of machines echoed through the valley. "They'll dig until the world bleeds," Yuri said. Mark didn't answer. His heart was heavy. He had seen how Earth's curiosity turned into hunger, how discovery always led to control. There has to be a way to stop them, he whispered. Yuri turned toward him, her face lit by moonlight. "Not with weapons, not with words." "Then, how?" he asked. "By showing them what cannot be taken." The next day, Yuri led Mark and a small group of Taraki through narrow route paths into a deeper part of the forest, where trees glowed with their own light and animals moved with thought instead of instinct. At the heart of the jungle, she showed him something he had never seen before, a living stone the size of a boulder, floating in midair, wrapped in vines that pulsed like veins. It sang not with sound, but with feeling. Mark felt peace, then sorrow, then something like warning deep in his chest. "This is the heart of Tiver," Yuri said, "the source of all our power. If the humans reach this, they will break everything." Mark placed his hand on the stone, and for a moment it glowed brighter. "It knows I'm not Taraki," he said. "But it does not hate you," she replied, "because you came with open hands." He looked at her, then at the stone, and an idea formed. "If we can't stop them from digging, we have to make them fear the cost." Yuri's eyes narrowed. "Fear is not our way." "No," Mark said, "but truth can scare those who lie." He returned to the human base alone, wearing only his Taraki cloak. No weapons, no comms, just a datapad filled with scans, photos, and proof of a living system beneath the soil, a network of energy, memory, and biology beyond human understanding. He stood in front of General Rowan and his team. "You dig here. You don't just break treaties," he said. "You risk waking something that doesn't answer to your machines." Rowan laughed. More stories. Mark played the final recording footage of the floating stone. The way it responded to touch, the way its vines pulled away from raw metal, rejecting anything unnatural. He showed the readings of energy spikes, enough to shut down satellites, too blind drones to turn tech to ash. "This planet is alive," Mark said, "and if you cut into it, it will bleed on you." Rowan's laughter stopped. The data reached Earth within hours, causing a shockwave across scientific and political networks. The risk was now too great, the planet too unpredictable. The order came from above: cease all digging, withdraw troops, and return control to the Ethics Council. As the ships lifted away and the drills went silent, the Taraki gathered again, not to cheer, but to breathe. For now, they had survived once more. Yuri stood beside Mark on the high ridge. Watching the clouds drift across a sky that had seen too much, "You risked everything." She said, "No," he replied. "I protected everything." "That matters." Her fingers slipped into his, and they stood silently, knowing that peace was never simple and trust was always fragile, but as long as they stood together, the future still had a chance. A home between worlds. Time moved gently. On Tiver, after the last human ships left the skies, the grasslands grew tall again, untouched and golden. The ancient winds whispered through the trees, carrying stories of fire, peace. And the human who chose to stay, Mark, did not return to Earth, even when offered a medal, a high position, or even a quiet retirement. He refused. He had found something richer than honor, deeper than comfort. He had found meaning in the bond he shared with Yuri, and in the fragile peace he helped protect. Earth's Federation built an orbital station above Tiver, unarmed, quiet, and purely for observation. No drills, no soldiers, just scientists, poets, and dreamers who had read Mark's reports and wanted to understand rather than control. They came not as rulers, but as guests. In the Taraki village, Mark's home was a blend of both worlds. Built from native vines and clay, but fitted with solar panels and a filtered water system. Yuri decorated the walls with stories carved into wood, while Mark added star charts that glowed in the dark. It wasn't big, but it felt alive one morning. As the village prepared for the Festival of Light, Yuri stood in the middle of the moon circle, wearing a dress made of shining threads. Her people danced around her, humming the tune of the first sunrise. Mark stood nearby, nervous and smiling. Today was the joining day, the true bond between them. Not just tradition or reward, but choice in Taraki law. This joining had to be renewed after the first moon cycle to prove that love had grown from. Respect and choice had replaced ceremony. When the music stopped, Yuri stepped forward, holding a white feather carved from stone. "This is our symbol of forever," she said. "It does not fly, but it never fades." Mark knelt down, took the feather with care, and placed a ring made of Taraki crystal on her finger, shaped specially to fit her hand. "I didn't come here looking for you," he said, "but I found a reason to stay." The tribe cheered, the drums returned, and stars blinked brighter in the night. The celebration lasted long after the moons rose high, and for the first time in years, the Taraki sang the old songs not in fear, but in hope. In the days that followed, Mark and Yuri helped open a new learning circle where human and Taraki children could meet, play, and share stories. The first lesson wasn't science or math, it was listening. Each child, no matter how big or small, told their name, and something they feared, something they loved, and something they dreamed. A young human girl raised her hand. "I want to fly with a Taraki on my shoulder." A small Taraki boy replied, "And I want to ride a human's backpack and see over the trees." Mark watched from the edge, his heart full. He had fought battles, stopped wars, and made speeches. But this moment felt like his true victory. The day when both sides could imagine a future together without fear. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped behind the purple hills, Yuri and Mark sat beneath the whispering trees. The forest around them glowed softly. Their daughter curled up beside them, fast asleep in a woven cradle made of feathers and light stone vines. "She has your eyes," Mark said, brushing a curl from the child's forehead, "and your heart." Yuri replied, strong but too soft. They laughed quietly. The sound carried gently by the breeze. "Do you ever miss Earth?" Yuri asked after a long pause. "Sometimes," Mark said. "But I think Earth missed me more than I missed it. I belong here now. You always did." She said. Far above them, the stars shifted. one blinking brighter than the rest. It was the new Earth station, still watching, still learning, but no longer trying to own what they didn't understand. They had seen what happens when one man defends something small, something sacred, and refuses to look away. Mark closed his eyes, listening to the hum of insects, the distant sound of laughter, and the heartbeat of the planet beneath him. He had come to Tyver as a scout, an outsider with orders. Now he was more than that. Not just a mate, not just a protector, but a part of something older than technology and stronger than fear. He was home.